What was like the dynamic growing up for both of you?
I'd been an only child for 9 years, so I was good. The last thing I wanted was a younger sibling, so
Ashley was a little tough as an older sister.
I dropped him twice, but I think that has helped with the brain power and how tough he is.
Ashley, I still am a little bit salty you dropped me on my head as a kid.
Joining us today here on NFL Spotlight, he is one of the most underrated interior offensive linemen in the NFL, a two-time Super Bowl champion from the Kansas City Chiefs. It is Trey Smith, and we're also joined by his older sister, who is a manager of player engagement for the NFL. She is a career and life coach. It is Ashely Smith. Trey, Ashely, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for doing this. How are you both doing? Trey, Ashely, welcome here.
Thanks so much, Ari. Thanks for having us on. I'm doing great. Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Ari. We're really excited to be here with you, so thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So this is the first ever brother sister duo here on the show. This is, like I said, the NFL Spotlight Show. We love spotlighting people around the NFL who deserve more recognition. And both of you have fascinating careers and journeys, and we'll talk about all of it here. But before we get into the careers and everything, let me start just with this. There is a 9-year age gap between the two of you. What was like the dynamic growing up for both of you as children? And I'll start with Ashely as the older sister.
Yeah, to be honest, so by the time that Trey came into the picture, I'd been an only child for 9 years, so I was good. I was chilling, had my mom and dad. The last thing I wanted was a younger sibling. So, being honest, I was not the best sister, especially kind of growing up when we were younger. And it got to a point where once Trey was old enough, we would kind of like fight and wrestle in our parents' room. I mean, we have crazy stories from times where I would like pick up Trey when he's a little boy and would toss him in the air. I dropped him twice, but I think that has helped with the brain power and how tough he is. But yeah, I mean, we definitely fought a lot growing up. Trey, what would you say?
I'd say it's pretty accurate. Ashley was a little tough as an older sister, especially when I was younger. The infamous story about Chick-fil-A after school, like sometimes like she wouldn't pick up food for me. It could be a little tough on me. We'd have our battles and our moments, but like honestly, she was a great older sister. How much she cares for me, takes care of me even to this point now. I mean, I'm super blessed to have her in my life. But Ashley, I still am a little bit salty you dropped me on my head as a kid. But we got over it.
I think you turned out to be just fine.
For the most part.
All right, so both of you grow up, and eventually, I think I spoke to many people about this, but the number one purpose and passion in for all of you now and growing up really was your late mother and just her legacy. She passed away when Trey was in high school, and everything both of you have done is really for her. Ashely, you've kind of played a bit of a motherly figure. I would love to hear from both of you about her, what she meant to you, and really once that happened, how life really changed. And I guess I'll start with Ashely.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our mother was everything. She was someone who, from the time that we were young kids and, started talking, would always just encourage us to dream big and go after our goals and dreams in life. And something that I remember a lot about my mom is that she was a woman of faith. And so she taught us the importance of just, truly developing a relationship with God and having faith to believe God to bring us through no matter what life brings our way. And then she just taught us the importance of like education and working hard and being good people. I remember when we were at her funeral, we had so many people that like we had never even seen before. And they're just like, oh my goodness, I worked with your mom, or, I did this with your mom. And like, she blessed me in this way, whether she prayed with me or she encouraged me, or I was on hard times and she didn't tell anyone, but she gave me money, all these things. And so, yeah, I would definitely say our mom is the example for me of the type of woman that I want to be. And even having to step in like a mother figure role for Trey, I try to think oftentimes when we're talking through different situations, what would mom tell Trey? What would she do?
Trey, what would you say about your mother and her legacy and everything she left behind? And I guess also what Ashely did for you after that all unfolded.
Yeah. Where do I start with Dorcetta Smith? Our mom in terms of just a godly woman, a woman who emphasized education growing up, someone that was extremely giving and expressed us the importance of giving out to others and making sure the people around her were okay. And, just thinking about the times I had with my mom, just how grateful I was to have a woman like that in my life. And losing her was probably the hardest thing I went through in my life. In 2015 was just sort of lost in that moment. And a lot of times I look to my sister, my father as well as my support system to sort of pick me up in days when I'm low. And, I've just been extremely blessed to have someone like Ashely in my life to, care for me, genuinely ask her if I'm okay. She was at the University of Tennessee with me when I was in college as well. And just having that support system is just so important for me and my development. But losing my mom, there's no one that can really fill that void in my life. And there's not a day that goes by I don't think about her or miss her.
Ashely, where did the entire thing about you being so into giving and trying to help people come from? Did it come from your mother?
Yeah, I would definitely say it came from her. I think growing up, oftentimes saw our mother and our father just helping people and, emphasizing the importance of doing that and recognizing that, Trey and I were incredibly blessed to where both of our parents were educated, they worked hard, they were able to provide a great quality of life for us growing up. We were fortunate to go to private school and things of that nature. And so I would say that our parents reminded us at a young age the importance of using your blessings to bless other people. So I would definitely say that part of our family fabric or DNA to care for other people and give to others definitely came from our parents.
Well, I definitely want to talk a little bit about everything you do, whether it's on the field and off the field, and how everything really circles back to her. And Ashely, you had the opportunity at the very beginning to be a student manager under Hall of Famer Pat Summitt during your time at Tennessee. You said that along with your mother, Coach Summitt had the biggest impact on you of anyone in your life. What leadership skills did you glean from being around the late legend?
Yeah, Coach Summit. To be honest, oftentimes I think about just having had the opportunity to be a student manager for the Lady Vols basketball program. And it's surreal sometimes when I think about, having worked for Coach Summit and a lot of the things that she taught us, I carry with me today. So for instance, people would often send in like Wheaties boxes, posters, basketballs. And so, a group of managers, we would go in the conference room with Coach and we would just kind of have an assembly line where we would just pass all these items around, in a circle while we're sitting around this long conference table and she's talking to us. And at the time, the court at Thompson Bowling Arena had been named the Summit. And so I asked her, I just said, Coach, did you ever think that you'd be the winningest coach in America, which she was at the time? Did you ever think that there would be a basketball court named after you? And she's like, no, I just love coaching young women and teaching them the game of basketball and helping to positively transform their lives. And so I said, well, what's one piece of advice that you would want us to remember from working with you? And she said, always treat people with respect. Whether you are working with the janitor of an organization or the CEO of an organization, treat people with respect, treat people with kindness in the way that you would want to be treated, because you never know what people are going through and how you giving an encouraging word or just acknowledging their existence could bring some light to their day. But also, you never know who people will become. And you may be in a situation where someday you'll need help from that person. But if you didn't treat them right at some point, then they may not be willing to return the favor for you. And so that's the biggest piece. I always try to think about, what do people experience when they meet me? Do they meet someone who's kind and is encouraging and is, positive and fun to be around? Or am I someone who people are like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get away from her?
Right, when you hear your sister say all that and the way she tries to impact so many people, like what goes through your mind that she's able to do that and all the things that she learned from a young age and how she's impacting so many people now every single day?
Just proud. There's a sense of pride in her and what she continues to do on a daily basis. Something that, like she spoke on earlier, our parents sort of ingrained in us as kids early on to treat people with respect and treat them in a way that you want to be treated as well. And just thinking about her stories with Pat Summitt, we're talking about one of the best coaches of all time, not just women's basketball, but one of the best coaches of all time. And I remember when I was young, I had one experience with Pat Summitt after a game that we actually were able to go to. And we had a mutual friend in our family that were able to connect us to get tickets. And I was wearing a different team's colors at the time and was rooting for them over the Lady Vols. My mistake, I was young, but I remember being able to meet her post game as a little boy. And what stuck out to me and what sticks with me to this day is how nice she was and how personal she was with our family. It was like we're talking to an old family friend that we've always known. And for me, that's something I try to take into my life. Anytime I interact with anybody or meet any new people, I just try to be as personal as possible and just try to maintain that friendship and relationship and treat them with respect. You know, like Ashely said, regardless if it's the janitor or the CEO of a company, I want to treat people with respect and I want to leave a lasting positive impact on people.
Well, Ashely, after college, you went to work for the NCAA for a couple of years before going back to Tennessee, working your way up to assistant athletics director for player relations and development. I'm just curious, like, what really drove your passion for working directly with student athletes and helping steer them into the best people that they could become? Like, there are many different ways you could help people. What was the main reason you wanted to focus on this?
Yeah, I would say that when I worked with the Lady Vols, I really enjoyed working with the student athletes. And, honestly, some of them to this day are some of my best friends. And I think really seeing the positive impact that you can have on just helping people reach their full potential. So, yes, there were coaches that were helping them to, win SEC tournaments and compete in, NCAA tournaments. But I just remember a lot of conversations that we'd have about life or faith and how they would come back and say, man, you have no idea how that conversation or the word of encouragement that you gave or you praying for me has helped transform my life or has helped me become a better person. And so, honestly, I think as just opportunities came available. So, even when I worked at the NCAA, I worked in the championships and alliances department. So, my job was to plan national championships in different sports. And so, at the time, I kind of was just like, okay, I'm going to grow my career in the NCAA. And, when Trey was 15, our mother passed away unexpectedly. And so I was very kind of hands off with Trey's recruitment when it first started. But then losing our mom, I was like, hey, he needs someone to step in. And so just going to different football programs, and they kind of said, would you ever consider working in football? I was like, yeah, sure. So then I started out working as, a head coach's assistant. I worked my way up to a director of football administration, and then had a chance to move over and do student athlete development for all of Tennessee's sports. And that's honestly where I developed this strong passion for helping student athletes across all the sports for Tennessee and everything from like leadership development, community outreach, personal and professional development. And as I've continued to further my career, opportunities have opened in that area. And so it's definitely developed a passion, but I also think it's an opportunity for me to fulfill my purpose, helping people to reach their full potential.
I'm going to get to everything you're doing right now here in a second, but I want to shift over to Trey because you mentioned him, of course, at Tennessee. Trey, you were one of the country's top football prospects in high school, but just a few years after your mother's passing, the unexpected passing, while you were at Tennessee, you were dealt with your own battle with blood clots in your lungs. Many people thought that your promising football career would be over. How did you deal with that news, and what do you remember about that sophomore year and everything that unfolded right then?
Yeah. I remember after my freshman campaign, I had a really good season. I had a lot of success, maybe more success than I even thought I would have my first year playing at Tennessee. And I remember we had a coaching change. Jeremy Pruitt became the head coach at Tennessee. And we had our off-season program, and it's generally like our most strenuous program. They're trying to weed out the guys who are about the program, right? And I remember the first couple weeks, I was having no issues with my workouts whatsoever. I was killing it. All the running, conditioning, no problem whatsoever. And I remember we had one workout and I passed out and running and I couldn't finish it. And so the next day, I got so weak I could barely do a sit up or lift up a dumbbell. And I remember telling my doctors, like, hey, doc, something's not right with my body. I've lost 13 pounds in 2 days. And we do a blood test. It's just like, we'll just be a little cautious. We'll do all the testing that we can. They thought I had an upper respiratory infection. And kind of find out, I go to class that day and I think I was at my dorm room and I went to do a paper at the library and it's only like 400 yards away from my dorm. And I had to stop multiple times to sit down just to catch my breath. So I knew something was wrong with me. And I get a call from my doctor. He's a little frantic on the phone. And he say, hey, we just got to rush you to the hospital right now. And I'm freaking out the phone too. Like, doc, what's going on? So I remember getting to the hospital, being hooked up all these machines, have numerous tests done to me. And they told me, you have blood clots in both branches of your lungs. And we're lucky we found it in time. And I remember getting that news and one, not really understanding, okay, what does this mean? What does this diagnosis really mean at the end of the day? And a little naively thinking, okay, can I still play football? Because all I wanted to do was play ball. And just going through that process and being able to come back, I remember I had to do blood thinners for about 5 months. So I didn't miss a workout, didn't miss a single day of class, anything I could do to make sure I had the opportunity to get back on the field. I was making sure I was checking those boxes. And I remember I finally got the opportunity my sophomore year to get back on the field, started over half the season and had some of those same issues where I couldn't breathe well. Respiratory wasn't right. I was having different issues off the field. And remember we did another test and they said, son, you have blood clots again. So at that point, I was completely devastated because the doctor had told me prior that, you're lucky to get through blood clots the first time. If you have a diagnosis of blood clots 2 times, you're not going to be able to play anymore. So at that point, devastated, not really understanding what I could do in that situation. I remember just praying and asking God, if this is a plan you have for me in my life, let it be known, and just praying and meditating on it. And I saw a vision of me being able to run out in the field and play the game I love again. I remember sitting in Coach Pruitt's office at the end of the year meetings that year and talking to him and telling him, Coach, I don't know why I feel this way, but I know I'm going to be able to play football again. I already know it's going to happen. And so pretty much same deal. 5 months on blood thinners again. And I was able to have the opportunity to go back, play football again. And I was blessed to be able to come to this level and play in NFL.
It's an unbelievable story how you went through all of that. And I'm going to get into the draft process as well here in a second. But I want to ask just Ashely, what do you remember about all of that? Because you already had a lot going on in your life with your mother's passing a couple of years before that. What do you remember about all of this with Trey and all that unfolding? And I'm sure there's a time where you thought maybe his dreams could be over.
Yeah. I mean, I was definitely overwhelmed thinking that, okay, not too long ago, lost my mother. Now I'm in a situation where my brother's having health challenges, very serious health challenges. And so I think I just kind of felt like, God, what is really going on? Like, can my family get a break? And, um, I remember it was New Year's Eve. Can't quite remember the year. But I think it was when Trey had the second issue with blood clots. And I remember he called me and he was driving his car. He had been home in Jackson and he was headed back to Knoxville. And he was just like, I just need you to listen to me. And he said, I know it may sound crazy, but God has been speaking to me while I'm in the car. And he's told me that I'm going to play again and that I'm going to have great success. And so I was like, okay, if this is what God has said to you, then like, I believe it. I stand in agreement with you. And so let's just, go around to different doctors, see what they say, and, do everything that we can to put you in position, to play in a healthy manner. And so, the university sent Trey and my dad all over the country and, he was able to play. But I think the thing that stood out to me was Trey's faith. So at the time, there were so many media outlets that, every time you turn around, whether you got on X, which was formerly Twitter, or just got on the internet, Trey Smith is going to have to hang up his cleats. He's done. ESPN's number one recruit didn't pan out, like all these things, right? And Trey was able to silence the noise and say, no, this is what God told me. This is what I'm going to do. And for him to be in the position that he's in now, for me, I feel like it's incredible. And I look at Trey as a source of inspiration when I have my tough days or when I want to give up. Just even thinking about the draft and what that experience was. And I know that we'll get into that, but I think I just have so much pride when it comes to Trey. Like even last night was sitting at a game and was just like, wow, all the things that he's overcome to get to where he is. And so I'm just incredibly proud of him. I'm grateful to our mother and that she really emphasized having faith. And I'm also just grateful that Trey was like, I hear what these adults and what these medical experts are saying, but I'm going to lean and depend on God. And here we are.
Here we are. It's truly one of the more inspirational stories, really, in all of football. All football fans should realize what you've done, Trey. You've only missed one NFL game in your career. You've barely missed any snaps in your career. And you're on one of the best football teams in the league. You're one of the best guards in the NFL right now. And soon enough, if all goes well, you're going to see a lot of good things happen, hopefully, here in the offseason. We'll get to all that here in a second. But I want to talk about just the draft process because you followed the medical plan at the University of Tennessee. You got cleared. You started 12 of 13 games. You won the Fritz Pollard Award. You decided not to go pro yet. You played in your senior year, and eventually you go pro. Were you surprised that you fell all the way to the sixth round? What was that entire draft process like for you? What were your expectations? What do you remember about the entire process?
Yeah, first and foremost, I would be remiss not to at least acknowledge and thank the University of Tennessee for helping me out through my medical situation and how great they were to me and my family. And I think during my tenure at Tennessee, especially after the second diagnosis of blood clots, which ended up being a residual scar tissue in my lungs, what they saw. So it wasn't actually blood clots the second time, luckily enough. When we came back that year, we had to sort of undergo a medical plan, right? Because the thing with blood clots, obviously you have the risk of reoccurrence. How can we mitigate that risk? And what we ended up undergoing was something that had not been done in the game of football before. So I got tested, man, multiple days in a row with medication to understand how fast does it take blood thinner to leave my system. And once we determined that, I actually went through an intermittent dosing schedule at the University of Tennessee. So for my final 2 seasons at Tennessee, I didn't practice full contact at all. I would go every single day until Friday. I'll come off my medication and then go play on Saturdays. So that within itself was something crazy at the time where, one, we didn't know if it was going to work. It had never been done before in a contact sport like football. So there's a lot of trust. There's a lot of care with the doctors and that and belief that it would work. And obviously it did. And for us, I think the biggest issue with my representation at the time with my agents was trying to get teams to understand, okay, if we take this kid, we take this guy and he can't practice, what does that look like in terms of his development, which I get as well. And it was a really arduous ordeal trying to explain to almost all 32 teams, what the medical predicament was or what does it look like long term and trying to get them to understand the full scope of my medical condition as well at the time. So it was tough. And at the end of the day, I didn't really know where I was going to fall out in the draft. I had high hopes, obviously. I believe in my abilities as a player, my character as a man as well. And so, going into the draft, there's all the excitement. I think about every step of the journey from like fifth grade football, playing at the University of Tennessee and then being able to take that next leap and thinking about my mom, my dad, the sacrifices that people and mentors around me made for me in that situation. I mean, I was excited, right? And I remember the first day of the draft, Ashely can attest to this, almost the whole family's at the house. Like, I'm telling them, guys, I'm not going to go first round, but I appreciate you guys being here. I remember just sitting in my room, just playing video games, just talking to a lot of high school friends and college teammates who were just playing the game. So day one goes by, don't get a call, just sort of expected, right? Day two comes up and I was expecting a call at some point. And I remember when day two passed and I got no call, no notification or anything, just being so upset. In my mind, just not understanding, okay, I fell in the draft. Okay, cool. There's still gonna be an opportunity, but there is a little bit of disappointment in that moment. And I remember when day three came, half the day is over with and I'm sick to my stomach because I'm thinking, here I am. I did all these different things at the University of Tennessee. I worked my way through this condition and, I lost my mom at 15. I've gone through all these different things. My family's been through all these different things. And still in this moment, I don't get my moment, if that makes sense, right? Almost selfishly thinking, I want this moment in my life. And I remember day three, almost halfway it goes by and sitting there, Ashely and I are the only one in the house at the time. My dad had actually went out to go run and grab some food. And I remember one coach from an organization at the time called and said, you know what? I can't believe you're still here. Don't worry about it. We're going to bring you and your father in tomorrow, regardless of the medical situation. We're going to scramble. We're going to figure it out. And you'll be a part of our organization. And so at that point, okay, it is what it is. You don't get drafted, but you get an opportunity. And all I wanted was one opportunity to showcase my skills and talent and at least have an opportunity to play at the next level. And oddly enough, about 5 minutes later, I get a call and the location was Kansas City. And a doctor picks up the phone and he's just like, "Hey, I told you I'd give you a call back." And I'm sort of in my mind thinking, what does this guy want? What do you want? And he's just like, "Well, we're going to make you the newest member of the Kansas City Chiefs." And I don't think the realization hit until the owner, Clark Hunt, Mr. Hunt, he hopped on the phone and he said, "Hey, son, how are you doing? We're going to make you the newest member of the Chiefs." And I sort of like snapped out of it a little bit like, oh, this is happening. And, just getting that phone call, the excitement. I remember running out of my room, seeing Ashely in the living room, giving her a hug. And we're freaking out. And I remember calling my dad, like, "Dad, you're not going to believe this. You're not going to believe this. I just got drafted to Kansas City." And he's like, "Oh, man, no way. That's the coolest thing ever. Like, congratulations. And, hey, the tenders will be there in about 20 minutes. I'm on the way back home." So it was not your ideal draft story, but it's exactly what it needed to be. God's time is impeccable. And at the end of the day, that's how it was meant to be. And I've been blessed to be a part of this organization and team for the past years, being a starter, being able to win 2 Super Bowls. I mean, it's something short of incredible. And, every day I don't take anything for granted. It's really a special situation I've been in, and I'm blessed to be a part of this every single day.
Can I ask you, just during your draft process with the Chiefs, did you speak to Andy Reid? Did you speak to Brett Veach? What do you remember about just your conversations with that organization in particular?
Yeah. I want to say, I think I spoke to them at the Senior Bowl at some point during the interview process. Nothing crazy. I remember the day before the draft, speaking with my offensive line coach and assistant offensive line coach on a Zoom meeting and just doing a basic interview. But nothing out of the ordinary in terms of them.
Got it. Ashely, I heard, correct me if I'm wrong, that you crossed paths with Chiefs GM Brett Veach before Trey was ever in Kansas City. Is that true? How did that happen? How did that all unfold?
Yeah. So basically, when I was the assistant AD for player relations and development, we kind of had a changing of the guards where they made a coaching change and a change as it relates to our athletic director. And so at the time, I'd been at Tennessee for 5 years and kind of just felt like, okay, I don't know, like I just felt something within my heart and my spirit was just saying like, hey, it's time to move on. So I did something that I don't always tell young professionals to do, but Ari, I took a leap of faith and I left Tennessee with no job. And, I really took some time to just do some soul searching and think about what do I want to do next. And so, I knew there was something within me that kind of just kept saying the NFL. And so I reached out to NFL teams. So 3 in particular, the Titans, the Bucks, and the Chiefs. And at the time I was also like interviewing for roles with the NBA and other universities, but I knew the NFL was where I wanted to go. And so the Bucks got back to me. They didn't have anything. I didn't hear back from the Titans, but the Chiefs, kind of said, hey, we would love to have you. I sent in my resume and things of that nature and kind of told them, here's my skill set, would love to contribute to the team in any way possible. And they got back and kind of said, you're have a lot of experience, well accomplished. We're embarrassed to offer you this, but we have an opportunity that you can interview for. And it was the Norma Hunt player personnel training camp position. They had just created it. And so they said, do you have any interest? And I said, absolutely. And at the time, they didn't know that I was in the final 3 for my current role with the NFL League office. And while I was going through that interview process with different individuals within the NFL, they kept saying, well, do you think you can do this job? You don't have NFL experience. And in my mind, I felt that, hey, if I could work a training camp with the Chiefs, that would give me an opportunity to do just that and kind of check that box. And so I went through the interview process and they said, hey, we would love to have you come work our training camp. And I said, I would love to do it under one condition. And I said, you all just drafted my brother. And they were like, what? And they kind of said, who is your brother? I said, Trey Smith is my younger brother. And I said, so I would love to come and work training camp, but my priority is for Trey to be able to come and compete in camp and make the roster. So if you all don't foresee any issues, I was like, I've had a conversation with Trey. He's okay with it. If you all are okay with it, I would love to come and work training camp. And, they said, let's do it. And so I think for me, a big thing going into the camp, because obviously like I'm driving guys around on golf carts or, just doing things that were very much entry level. I really felt that God was just reminding me to take on the heart and the spirit of Ruth, when you think of that story, Boaz found Ruth when she was working in the field. And so I just felt like, okay, if I work hard, do the best I can do, develop relationships, then God will honor what I'm doing. And so yeah, things, the rest was kind of just history. I remember there were like 2 weeks left in the camp, and I'm laying in bed and I'm kind of thinking, like, God, what is going on here? I need a full time job. I need, benefits, things of that nature. And I wish I'd screenshot this because you know how you can get into your Gmail and it'll say like 0 minutes ago or 10 minutes ago, an hour ago. Literally, when I checked my email, it said 0 minutes ago. And so, a lady from HR reached out, asked me to get on the phone, spoke with her, and she offered me the position. But what I found out after the fact, and honestly, I credit Coach Andy Reid and Brett Veach for giving me my first start in the NFL. I found out that so many people from the Chiefs organization called and said, hey, this young lady is talented. You all should hire her. And so I'm just so grateful to the Chiefs, not only in the way that they've treated my brother and, the opportunities he's had, but what they've done for me as well.
It's amazing how everything comes full circle for both of you, and you get your start in the NFL with the Chiefs, and you get your first job thanks to the people there in Kansas City. It is truly incredible. It's an unbelievable story. Trey, I do want to ask you just overall your career so far in Kansas City. You're 4 years in. It's been one for the record books. You mentioned it, two-time Super Bowl champion. You're blocking for a future Hall of Famer. Your coach is a future Hall of Famer. You've barely allowed any sacks so far through 3+ years. Many are already speculating you could potentially reset the guard market come this offseason. Could you have envisioned this all happening for you and the way this is all unfolded, where at a time it felt like, why is this happening to me? And now you are probably in the most perfect situation you could be in.
Yeah, there's a moment or a couple moments that come into my mind. The first one I would say is, sitting in a hospital bed when I thought I had a second diagnosis of blood clots and getting a call from my mentors telling me, God didn't bring you this far. Your story is already being written and you just got to keep pushing. You got to keep fighting. And reflecting on that and going through the draft process, fighting at the University of Tennessee, being able to keep playing and, going through that draft process once again and just looking at how everything's been laid out. I mean, it's nothing short of incredible, right? And, at the end of the day, did I ever think I'd have this level of experience, success? No, no, not this much. To sit here as my fourth year, as a starter for this team, blocking for the guys I block for, having some incredible teammates, sharing the building with incredible human beings. Every day I go into work, with a smile on my face and genuinely excited to play the game. I'm well beyond blessed. I don't take anything for granted. And at the end of the day, I try not to look too far ahead. I try to stay right in where the moment is. I had a great head coach in high school, Mickey Marley. He taught me that at a young age. Even though I was having crazy success in high school, 5-star, number 1 overall on ESPN. But he said, son, if you don't worry about the present, all the other stuff won't ever pan out. And for me, I just try to stay locked in and focus on every single moment and enjoy the ride and experience that I have and take nothing for granted. I know that I'm a blessed individual and I know that God's been extremely gracious for me and my family. And at the end of the day, I have to uphold my end of the deal and work my butt off, work my tail off every single day to be the best player I can be, but also the best man I can be.
I want to ask you about two specific teammates. Everyone's going to think I'm going to ask about Patrick and Travis. It's not them. The two people have been with you from the start. I want to ask you about Creed Humphrey and Joe Tooney. What could you tell me about those two guys you line up next to every single day for the past 4 years?
Those are my dogs, man. Man, we've been, in terms of coming to the organization together and playing for the Chiefs at the same time, we sort of came in as a new group along with Orlando Brown at the time and Lucas Yang and Andrew Wiley and a plethora of other guys. But, just being able to have that bond and chemistry with guys. I mean, there's some of the closest friends I have in life, guys that you go to war with and you really depend on them every single time. They're going to pull through and come through when you need them. And in terms of just great friends, I mean, when you think about lifelong friendships and relationships that will go forever, those are two guys that I always think about in terms of who I can trust and depend on. But like I said, I mean, when I come in the building, being able to be around a great group, two great guys like Joe and Creed, they make it fun. You've had sustained success with guys that you play next to. I mean, it's an absolute blast coming to work every single day, and to have the drive that they have and the competitive nature and just wanting to push each other and be at our best is something short of incredible. And it's really a unique and special friendship and bond that I know is going to last a lifetime.
Yep, the year they came in is the year you came in. They lost the Super Bowl the year before. The offensive line was not in a good spot, and Brett and the coaching staff, they signed Joe in for agency. Creed was drafted in the second round. You were drafted in the sixth round. The rest is history there with this Chiefs offensive line, which many teams, I can tell you, are trying to emulate, and it's very, very hard to do. I'm going to circle back here to Ashely before we wrap up. Ashely, we mentioned what you do right now for the NFL. I'm just curious just to hear from you. What is the day-to-day like working in player engagement for the NFL?
Yeah, so during the season, I'm traveling to a lot of clubs, so NFL teams, and just speaking with current players on the off-season programs that we're offering. Also, I work with the heads of player engagement and player engagement staff members at all the clubs. So, really working to make sure that during the season, CBA mandated programming, whether it's education on DVSA, financial literacy, professional development, just making sure that guys are getting the information and resources that they need so that they're getting the proper education to continue to holistically develop and be people and the professionals that they need to be on and off the field. And then from an off-season standpoint, it's a lot of event execution. So we hold a number of workshops, initiatives, and programs that are focused on continuing education, financial literacy, and personal and professional development. So, whether guys are interested in attending workshops on broadcasting and media, or, we're partnering this year with Hidden Empire Film Group and Skydance for guys that are interested in film and entertainment, LVMH for fashion. So, really just making sure that we're providing programs and initiatives that will give guys a chance to explore career fields, network with different professionals. So that way, whether they're doing this in conjunction with football or once they decide to, hang up their cleats, that they have a sense of, identity that goes beyond just playing football. Football is the vehicle, it's the platform that you've been given, but there's so much more to that. And so I love really working with guys to help them explore their gifts, talents, and passions to be the best people that they can be off the field.
Well, it's great to see all the amazing work you do. It's been great to hear both of your stories, both of your journeys. I do want to wrap it up of here of asking the last question I ask every single guest of here. I'm going to ask both of you to give one person. This is the NFL Spotlight Show. We spotlight people around the league who deserve more recognition, stories that the fans need to hear about. Trey, Ashely, is there one person who you believe should be in this seat in the future? And let's start with Ashely.
Yeah, so I'm always going to advocate for women. So I can give you a number of women, but I think someone who would be great to learn more from would be Autumn Lockwood. She's someone who, she's a woman who is involved with the football side for a club. And so I think it'd be great to hear from her.
All right. Thank you, Ashely. And then Trey, player, coach, executive, something outside the box, whatever you want. Who do you think should be here on the show in the future?
It's a tough one. I would say a former teammate, L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know if you've had him on prior, but I think he's an outstanding human being and one of my favorite teammates I've had. And I think he has an incredible story of his perseverance. So I think he would be great.
Yep, L'Jarius right now in Tennessee was traded this offseason, got a well-deserved contract there, and we will definitely try to get Autumn and L'Jarius here on the NFL Spotlight Show. Ashely, Trey, I really want to thank you for coming on over here, sharing your story, your journey, everything you do. I think both of your stories and how you got to where you are is super inspiring. It's emotional, and the way both of you have come out on top, it is just inspiring, and many people can learn a lot from both of you. So thank you so much for coming on here, and continue success to the both of you. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you having us
Thanks
on,
for
Ari.
having us,
Thank
Ari.
you.
Special thanks to Trey Smith and his sister Ashely Smith here for joining us here on the show this week, spotlighting their life, career, journey, everything that they do. I mean, that was, like I said, it was emotional. It was inspiring. It is a story that everyone should really listen to, and everything they went through, how they, held strong, believed in their faith, and eventually came out here where they're both together working in the NFL, one as a player, one as a player engagement manager for the NFL. And Trey, 6th-round pick, thought he might never play again. Now he's on the best team in the NFL. And like I said before the interview, he is slated to become a free agent this offseason and will get a lucrative, well-deserved contract, wherever that ends up being, hopefully for his sake in Kansas City. But a really, really great story. We thank both of them here for sharing it here on the show this week. I mean, I told this to them before they joined the show. Like, there are many brother combos in the NFL. I mean, we had, the Watts, the Mannings. We had Rondé Barber here on the show, of course, him and Tiki. There are not many brother-sister ones. And Trey Smith, Ashely Smith, they are definitely one of them here in the NFL, and it's a very, very special one. So again, thank you to both of them for joining us here on the show this week.